and the one that doesn't belong, which is me. So I just want you to understand, I'm not a late to the Schools of Art and Design fundraising party, and in a way it's kind of fun to put the band back together and see old friends like Ellen in this chat. My role here is to just kind of sit back and let Jaclyn and this great panel that we put together kind of drive the bus. There's a couple of ground rules to walk through, and then I'm gonna try and shut up mostly, really. You can see the agenda on the left of the screen here. We're gonna follow that mostly, and my job in part is gonna be to try and keep us moving with the things that we wanna chat about. Well, we don't have any Zoom polls, so but we can try and add some. If anybody has a good question, send us a note. I've become a big fan of the chat button in Zoom conversations, and really come to believe that you can accomplish a lot with that little button. If you want to chime in and talk, we can unmute anybody's microphone. We just are trying to avoid feedback and other background noise, but that doesn't mean we're trying to restrict this conversation to just us important panel people. So send a note if there's anything we touch on that really is something you want to chime in about. Whether or not you want to talk, please use the chat function just to type in whether you agree, disagree, variations of what you're doing on any of the things we talk about. I have now figured out how to save and share the chats after these meetings, so we'll send that out as a deliverable along with a video of this whole recording if there's something useful that comes out of it. And but otherwise, use the chat button, and I'll be sort of lurking in the back, seeing who's got something they want to say or somebody we might want to bring into the conversation. Okay, that's it. And otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Jaclyn and this other great panel. Jaclyn, why don't you introduce yourself, and you can introduce our friends. But thanks everybody for joining, and I'm thrilled to be part of it. Over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Bob. Bob has always been a favorite of mine, going to conferences over the last 10 years. So I was thrilled when he asked if there would be any interest, and of course, lots of hand raising. So thank you for joining us. My name is Jaclyn Day. I'll keep this really brief. I've been in annual giving for about 13 years now, starting traditional student collar, needed a job, wanted to make money, started becoming a fundraiser, and kept going in annual giving land from there. I currently work at UNC School of the Arts. We are a small performance-based public institution, not private, but public. We have about 1,200 students from high school all the way up to our grad programs. And lastly, we are wrapping up a campaign. Bob, I don't think you knew that. We are in the public phase of a campaign right now. So we are having all sorts of fun with this pandemic. Kelly, I'm going to turn it over to you next if you want to introduce yourself just real quick.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kelly Lewis-Gump. I'm the Director of Annual Giving for Cranbrook Academy of Art. And Cranbrook is a unique institution, as it is sort of what you described, Jaclyn. We are part of a larger organization called Cranbrook Educational Community, which is from preschool all the way through 12th grade. And then where I work is a graduate school. And it's a small graduate school consisting of about 130 to 140 students. And so, and my background is in the arts as well as in fundraising. I've been in fundraising for over 20 years. And I do hold a dual position though for the Art Academy at Cranbrook, as I am Director of Annual Giving and Membership for the Art Museum. So I fundraise for both institutions.
Sorry, I'm getting used to Marissa, why don't you come up next?
So my name is Marissa Finer. I'm the Director of Annual Giving at Berklee. And so our team oversees two separate annual funds. We have Berklee College of Music's annual fund and Boston Conservatory at Berklee's annual fund. We merged 4 years ago, and they're still separate for another 6 years based on the merger agreement. So we kind of have two parallel campaigns going on all year. Everything we do, we kind of mimic for both. But Berklee has about 4,000 students at a time between our Boston campus, our Valencia campus, and then some other programming we have online through our online school.
Great, thanks Marissa. Julia, we're going to go to you and then we'll go to Ellen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Julia Crane Dempsey. I work at Massachusetts College of Art and Design, MassArt for short. It's a public college of art and design and art education. And I work on a two-person annual giving team. I've been in annual giving my whole career working at higher ed institutions the whole time. And I've been at MassArt just over a year now. It's a great place to be. Happy to be here today.
All right, Ellen, you want to wrap us up with the introductions and then we'll jump into our topics.
Sounds great. I'm Ellen Walbrun. I'm Associate Director of Annual Giving at Rhode Island School of Design, RISD for short. We're a private art school in Providence, Rhode Island with about 2,500 students, grad and undergrad. And we have the privilege right now of having a division that's growing. So over the past year or so, we've seen our engagement, which everyone else calls advancement, division, grow from about 15 up to 40 plus staff members. The annual fund right now is 4 staff members, 2 of which are frontline officers. So it's been an interesting couple of years, and I've been at RISD a long time, so fun to see.
Perfect. Man, I wish I had 4 people working with me. I'm a single shop, so. So jumping into our topics, so what happened was when we got our panels together, we kind of shot out what's top of mind, what are we thinking about, what are our concerns, and fiscal year end is definitely the recurrent theme of, you know, what's top of mind right now. And Ellen, actually, I'm going to turn it to you. Ellen has an incredible challenge that she talked about. And Ellen, I'm going to let you take it away just to make sure I don't butcher it. But from my understanding, it's a Board of Trustee member matching up to $750,000. So take it away, Ellen. Talk about your challenge a little bit.
Sure. So we, when the coronavirus hit in mid-March, we moved to remote learning like many other schools. Our gift officers stopped traveling at that point, and we had to regroup with what we were doing. At the same time, we were about $800,000 from our $3.5 million RISD fund goal. And at that point, the school was spending money helping students return home, buying technology for remote learning, refunding room and board for the rest of the year. They also decided to continue paying work-study students who relied on that money to live. So at the end of that, we were about $20 million in the hole. So in addition to our RISD fund goal that we had to make, there was also this other pocket of money that had been used. So our president reached out to our board of trustees looking to create a challenge fund. And at that point, the goal was to ask the trustees to donate $400,000 for a one-to-one match, and that would help us get to our goal by the end of the fiscal year. Well, when our president was done making calls, reaching out, sending a letter, she was at just over $750,000 from the trustees. So in the end, our goal has now become a $1.5 million challenge. So this is by far the largest challenge we've ever done, and it's all hands on deck at this point, between gift officers and back office and so forth. We've taken the letter that the president wrote to the board, which basically laid out all of our financial concerns, and turned that into an appeal, segmenting it out, versioning it, and that's gone out to our alumni, parents, and some other constituencies. And then to follow up on that, it's a 1 week, 1 letter per week, 1 email per week campaign through the end of June. And then for the remainder of this month, each email is going to focus on coronavirus stories, how community members are rising to the challenge, essentially, and asking for support of RISD. And then in June, it's going to be a video campaign, also following the challenge theme. We have a parent, an alumni couple. I think we have a family as well, frontline workers whose daughter goes to RISD. So we're pretty excited about that. I don't have a lot to show at this point because it's still early in the game, but it's been exciting. And we haven't done a lot of video yet, so I'm hoping this propels us forward with that technology as well.
Ellen, it's interesting that you're including parents. I know some schools have decided to stay away from parents just because the students don't know, what classes are going to be like and that sort of thing. So why did you come to the decision to keep parents in?
We talked about it, and it's hard. We have a leadership council, which as our parent and family association, and there's been some discussion because obviously, it's a tricky segment. We talked about pulling them out, but parents are really important to us. Our parent participation is actually higher than our alumni participation. And we just decided that we couldn't ignore that group, especially as getting to goal is so important for us this year.
Perfect. Ellen's not the only one doing a challenge. Kelly, you guys did a challenge as well over at Cranbrook, doing a donor match, and that was specifically for student emergency, correct?
It was. We raised funds for student emergency. We have several students who are from foreign countries who are still actually on campus, and now we are more in the mode of helping them stay on campus just because of visa issues so that they can return in the fall. So we've raised funds by just asking our closest friends, sort of what you've mentioned with our board, our life governors, and some other people. And we actually had a very tight time frame of about a 3-week match time. And so we were just looking to get funds immediately. And we raised about $46,000, and then that was matched by one donor. So we were thrilled with that by 35 donors. So that was nice. And then, but a lot of those people we asked are also being hit up for a variety of other solicitations as well, whether it's annual fund or we just had a virtual event and things like that. So we are hitting them up multiple times, but when they saw the needs of our students and the need to have a fund like this for future emergencies, it really hit home pretty easily.
And that's an interesting topic. Do you flip over to just student emergency, knowing that you've got other funds that also have goals that need to be met? And so I'm going to open it up, Marissa and Julia, since we haven't heard from you two yet. What direction are you guys taking? Are you focusing solely on student emergency, or are you getting to the point where you're saying, okay, we've started student emergency, but we also are looking at needs with an annual fund with student retention and that sort of thing? So what are you guys doing?
Yeah, so we're having these exact same conversations. So it's nice to hear we're in good company. We shifted to completely focusing on student emergency fund across the board for about, say, a month. So that included volunteer leadership, major donors, annual fund, everything in between. And we raised about $270,000 for the student emergency fund. So it blew us away, the response to it, but we've actually had such an incredible response that we are going to start to shift away from that. We have met our need, at least for the foreseeable future, with that in the CARES Act that's also supporting students. So we're shifting more towards annual giving, or we would like to be, but for us, we're trying to figure out what the messaging is around that, because we can't ignore the elephant in the room, but the messaging and the urgency for a student emergency fund is just so different. So how do we transition back is something that we're grappling with, and I would love to hear from other schools how they're thinking about that.
We had a similar situation to everybody else. We started a student emergency fund late March, and so we had a crowdfunding campaign run for about 3.5 weeks, and we have a much smaller goal than Berklee. So we had a $30,000 goal. We hit that. We felt really good about it. And then we were like, all right, we need to shift everybody back to annual fund. Otherwise, we're not going to hit our unrestricted goal for the year. So we've been following our normal solicitation schedule for fiscal year end for annual fund, but we've been tweaking all of our messages. And it sort of has been sounding like, everybody knows this year has been different. You've been a great supporter in the past, and you've helped MassArt students follow their passions, and their path to following their passions looks different right now. Faculty and staff are working really hard to be innovative in meeting our students' needs, and we need your help to transform the plans into a reality, like things like that. And yeah, we've been doing our normal fiscal year end outreach, and we're back on the annual fund train full force.
You know, Jaclyn, Alfred from USC has chimed in with what their plans are for the end of the fiscal year. It's going to be more of a stewardship focus. Alfred, if you're up for it, I would love for you to chime in and talk. I'm going to turn on the microphone. Are you there? And will you tell us what you're up to?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, great. Hi.
So I was meeting with my higher ups, and we thought, well, you know, at USC we have our annual university-wide day of support, we call it, which is an initiative that, you know, gets our volunteers involved. They galvanize support. We do social media challenges. We give our volunteers a toolkit to sort of spread the word on USC's annual day of support. It's really a participation it's really participation focused. So with that said, we as a unit, we participated and we did a nice video from our dean, which we sent out to our constituents, alumni, parents, and donors and friends. And the dean, it was part sort of a care check-in, you know, just to make sure, you know, everyone's doing well, but it was also sort of a state of the school with, you know, what we've been doing to remain innovative, and how we transitioned to an online learning platform, and as well as the Student Emergency Fund, which we created for our school, and, you know, and that sort of was our focus for the remainder of spring. So with that said, we thought, you know, given like unemployment levels rising and sort of the state of the country and, you know, the economy slowly reopening, there's still a lot of anxieties out there with our donors and our parents, and not also with our parents, who are a big donor base for us. The uncertainties of how the fall will look, you know, for their kids who are in school. We just thought maybe it's not appropriate we do another ask, but maybe we just send out a nice stewardship piece that highlights how we've been innovated, highlights all the successes we've had transitioning to an online learning platform, we've done a lot of virtual programming, highlighting that virtual programming, and then sort of like maybe an update on what they can expect to see throughout the summer into early falls. And then there wouldn't maybe we wouldn't do an ask, or at the very least, if there is an ask, we would just have like the give button at the very end with maybe 1 or 2 sentences, you know, if they want to continue supporting, but it wouldn't be an overall hard ask. So that's what we're toying with. But again, I'm trying to do some research to see what other institutions are doing, as well as other units at USC. As you know, we're a large private institution, so every unit does their own fundraising, has their own goals, has their own constituent base. So, and then we have a central annual fund office, and we're still waiting to hear sort of what their plans are. So I was just curious to know how people were going to close out the year, if you guys are still going to be doing like these asks, or maybe it's acquisition or whatnot, but or maybe you're just doing some stewardship and thanking people, you know, just simply thanking them for, you know, being a part of this process that we've all had to face.
You know, Alfred, thanks for that. I don't mind saying that I've been hesitating to say anything too profound about how you need to manage annual giving during this situation, because, you know, at first it seemed sensible just to put everything on hold. But now that we're 2 months into it and people have these goals hanging over their heads, a lot of us are now running down the hill, you know, trying to get on people's radar screens. I think the stewardship point is perfectly made, that you know, we'll come out of this on the other side hoping that people will feel comfortable enough resuming support, or maybe never stopping their support. But you know, just like a guy trying to put on a conference a couple weeks ago in California that pivoted from an all in-person conference to an all Zoom conference, you just need to be nimble, right? Jaclyn, back to you. That was a nice comment.
Well, and I was thinking it's interesting because you, Alfred, you did a hard ask on your day of support on May 4th. And it's interesting because Julia institution also moved forward with their day of giving, and they were able to wrap it up. And then there's the rest of us who we sat on our day of giving saying, oh my gosh, do we do this? Do we not do this? And in fact, at School of the Arts, we're still, we're waiting until June 5th to decide, is this a smart idea? Is this not? And so it seems like those of you who decided to take the plunge and do it, you're able to switch to more stewardship for end of year. Whereas I know for our school, we're looking at day of giving is going to make or break if we hit goals. So hopefully the Vice Chancellor moves forward with it. Out of curiosity, Alfred, I'm going to ask you to speak again real quick, and then I'll have Julia speak about her day of giving. Since you guys did move forward with it, what kind of pushback did you see? Did you see any? Did you see good response? I guess that's been kind of the question is, if you pull the plug, how are people going to respond? Is it tone deaf or not? And so it seems like you guys were able to successfully manage it. So Alfred, I'm going to let you, hopefully if you're up for it, talk a little bit about your day of support on May 4th with everyone else. And then Julia, I'll let you talk about MassArt Day. So.
Sure, yeah. So definitely with our day of support, the plans, the plans to move it forward started really late in the game. I mean, really at the 12th hour, because typically for a May 4th day of support, we start galvanizing, excitement in like March. We start meeting with our volunteers in March and April, and we start giving them the toolkit. And, we had, before COVID, I had an idea to do to have our Alumni Leadership Council sort of do like a pop-up networking event on day of support. And then we were going to have, folks give through our mobile giving app, so it was going to be like this fun sort of like in-person tangible experience, but really leading up to day of support with the messaging, and then going hard on day of support with all the social media messaging, the email that would drop and everything. So this year, because it was so uncertain, we were like, well, are we doing it? Or are we not doing it? And then it was decided that we were doing it, and we really only had like 2 weeks to prepare. So we didn't do I really didn't get to do much with my volunteers as I had planned. So that was a little bit of a bummer. But we did get the dean to do a nice video message, and I put together sort of like a body of like text that promoted our student emergency fund, as well as scholarship, and of course our unrestricted fund we always push. And I can honestly say that we didn't get any negative responses. I know some other institutions, some of my counterparts at other institutions had sort of those typical responses of like, well, why don't you cut the dean's salary? Or why don't you, that athletic director, why doesn't he give? Sometimes people are, as you all know, sometimes our constituents don't necessarily know how university budgets work. So they think we can just take money from anywhere. But surprisingly, from my arts community, I didn't get any of that, even from our parents. Our parents have been very understanding, and I can tell you what really helped us was that right when we went into this sort of safer at-home new reality, we really nipped it in the butt in terms of like our care outreach. We started emailing our parent donors right away, checking in with them. We had the dean do an initial care email to the alumni community. So I think our constituents, speaking for our unit, they knew that we have already been going above and beyond to make sure that everyone's okay. We were offering a diverse menu of virtual programming with people in the industry talking about COVID and how it's affected them. We've had some celebrities come and do some sort of one-off virtual sessions with our students. So, I mean, we really nipped it in the butt right away, right? It wasn't like we went silent and then all of a sudden, oh, here, come and support us. So on our end, we really didn't have any negative feedback, and actually our participation went up this year compared to last year. I had more parents involved this year supporting our student emergency fund. We had alumni, some of my alumni volunteer leaders who I have a threshold for them to make an annual gift commitment of $1,000. They dropped their gifts right away. I didn't even have to ask them. Usually by the end of the fiscal year, if they haven't given, I have to have that awkward exchange of, hey, you haven't made your commitment gift yet, but they just dropped their gifts right away. So it was really, for us, it was like, wow, people are really, and we get it, not everybody can give. They're in a position to give because, again, with the economy, but for those that can, and that's something important too that we're using in our messaging. We're making sure that we're being transparent, like only if you can give, because we understand that not everybody right now is in a position to give. So for those that could, they did give, and our participation for us being a small art school at USC, our participation was up. I think we haven't gotten the final numbers from Central Annual Fund, but I'm pretty sure participation was up university-wide. So for being something so last minute, people really just, wanted to help, and we've had parents and donors, one-off email us and say, hey, how can I help? Maybe I'm not making that major gift this year right now because my stocks or, things are a little weird with my finances, but I want to do something, maybe $1,000, maybe $1,500. I want to do something. So we've had some pretty good, it's been okay so far. But now with that said, I think you mentioned, for those of us that have, continued on with our Day of Giving and maybe have seen some success, maybe we don't need to do such a hard ask for fiscal year end. Maybe it can just be more of like a, hey, thank you. Just thank you for sticking by us with this crazy semester. Thank you for understanding that, your kids' experience maybe didn't quite look what we thought it was going to look. I think that's kind of what we're leaning more towards, like just simply a thank you. Thank you for sticking by us. We hope that we can soon gather together in the new year and just maybe leave it at that and allow people to sort of have a breather. There's a lot of people right now that have virtual fatigue. They're tired of being on Zoom. Our alumni volunteers who have really stepped up lately are like, we need a break. We can't do anything else right now for, like maybe a month. So I think we just kind of need to give people a breather. Sorry if that was a tangent.
No, that's actually a really good tangent. I'm going to let Julia talk, and then we'll probably circle back to that tangent because that brings up a really good point. So Julia, why don't you talk about your Giving Day real quick?
Thanks. Yeah. Congratulations on your success, Alfred. That sounds really great. We also had about 2 weeks to put our Day of Giving together. And we thought for a long time about what we were going to do because it would be tone deaf. Usually our Giving Day is like rah, rah, and there's giveaways and there's people everywhere and it's very celebratory and there's friendly competition, just like everybody else's Day of Giving. And so we saw BC do their Day of Caring, and we saw a lot of other colleges on FundList doing more like Day of Empathy, Day of Caring, and then not really incorporating an ask, or maybe it would be like a very soft ask. But much like Jaclyn alluded to earlier, our year-end goal is contingent on us having a successful Day of Giving. And we're like, we can't really let this go. So we tried to make it like half and half, where it was really soft and warm and fuzzy and like we're all coming together and that's the spirit of the day and you can make a gift and we're going to ask you to several times, but you don't have to. And we also offered a second option for people to participate in the day. We had them write an encouraging note to a current student, and then at the end of MassArt Day, we compiled them and sent them out to the students and to everyone who received all of our solicitations. It really ended up working out. We had excluded parents from our emergency campaign, and then after the point that they received the room and board refund from the school, we put them back into our solicitation pool. So they were included in this. Students were excluded, did not receive any MassArt Day communications except for the nice notes at the end. And we got just a handful of like, why are you fundraising during the pandemic type emails. Most people were totally fine with it. Then it was basically the amount of negative feedback that we would get from any given campaign. So I think it worked really well. This is a strong performance for us dollar-wise. That's a lot fewer donors than we would normally see, but I think that's to be expected because we didn't have like the super robust volunteer infrastructure set up that we would normally have because we had such short lead time. But yeah, I could talk about anything else, and I don't want to go on for too long.
No, and I want to say thank you to you guys who have taken the plunge and done it, because for those of us sitting on the fence, we were waiting to see who jumped in the water first and see if you guys, sank or swam. So if you are interested in other giving days, some that I know that are coming up is North Carolina Central University is doing theirs next week. UNC Chapel Hill is doing theirs in mid-June. And I always want to say Fordham, and it's not Fordham. Gloria Gooseby at, Bob, can you fill it in for me? Gloria's at
Furman.
Furman is doing theirs in a couple weeks as well. I think at the end of May, so not next week, but the week after. So if you're like me and you're still waiting to pull the trigger, there's a couple other campaigns you can look at and see how well they do. But it is heartening to know that some folks are doing well with their giving days. I think our concern at our office was, is it tone deaf to do a peppy rah, rah, rah day of giving? So thank you for bringing that up. And Jonathan, you did a little bit of a giving day too. You want to talk about what you were up to? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
That's okay. So our giving day was actually pre-COVID. I've been sending messages out just sort of about what we're doing around our fine and performing arts school, because we're in charge of fundraising for that college. So I'm happy to talk about that, but I don't want to talk about our giving day because it was definitely not in the same vein as I think what a lot of you all are going through, because ours was in February.
Jonathan's at Western Carolina, for anybody who doesn't know.
Oh yeah, sorry, Western Carolina University. I probably should have told you all.
That's all right.
Well, I feel that I'm looking at the chat as I'm listening too, so.
Sure.
Perfect. Well, we're going to move on in our topics then. So moving past just dollars, because yes, of course, we're all focused on hitting year-end goal. But there are also other things that have been top of mind for us. And the committee talked about how do you stay top of mind during this time when people are getting lots of Zoom conversations and you've got everything kind of going down at the same time. How do we let our constituents know what we're up to and how to make it really meaningful communications. And Berklee has done an incredible job. And so Marissa, I'm going to turn it over to you because you guys have had some great communications with your donors on a regular basis.
Very handy having a bunch of performers, isn't it?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I think probably a lot of people on this call can relate where I think sometimes we're so focused on sending out the perfect performance that we miss some opportunities to send out what our students look like on a day-to-day basis in their classroom, being students, having it not perfect, but of course they're all incredible artists. So it always sounds and looks good, I think, to us, but it's been a moment to kind of embrace a little bit more of that, creative spirit where things don't have to be perfect to be enjoyable and to be inspirational. And it's been a time for us to embrace that in a way that we've never done before. And I think it's behooving the school at large, to be honest. And I think it's really benefiting the fundraising team to see our students really just be themselves in their homes, in their t-shirts and whatever they're wearing at the time, performing, really humanizes it. So the first question we really had when we were facing, us being away from the office, and we were asked to hold on fundraising for pretty much the entire month of March. So how do we still stay in touch with our donors? We were getting I'm sure like everyone, 1 million communications from every organization. My inbox was flooded. How do we not be one more email in our donors and prospects mailboxes? And so for really the first time ever, the annual giving team, the alumni affairs team, and the major gifts team got together and figured out how can we create a newsletter of some sort that will actually benefit all of our different communities. It sounds crazy talking about it, but we'd never done that before. We'd never done a holistic communication. And our goal was really just to say, what will people be excited to see every Friday morning at 9:30 when it gets sent? And so then we've coined it Virtually Amazing. That was our president, Roger Brown's idea. And the entire idea is to send out positive, fun, warm, happy messaging. And again, it's on a schedule, so our donors and prospects know when to expect it. And again, we've sent out messaging in a way that we've just never done before. It's not giving focused. It's fun stories from alumni, it's videos, it's interviews with a member of the leadership at Berklee, and it gives a chance to kind of see behind the scenes a little bit more. And every other issue has an intro from a member of either a volunteer leadership or an AVP or an SVP of this particular team. So the first one was by our board chair, Susan Whitehead, and had incredible open rates, but we've seen consistent engagement over the last 2 months. We're reducing it a little bit now over the summer, so it'll only come out once a month, but it's set in place, I think, a communication that we want to continue moving forward. And it's just been a great opportunity, I think, for annual giving to highlight some of the skills and tools that we have that I don't think everyone always thinks about on a day-to-day basis, what we do and how we do it. So when they were, everyone was going, well, how do we send a newsletter to 40,000 people? And how do we segment it in a way that, is valuable for every group? And how do we pull content together that quickly? We're kind of going, well, we do this all the time. No big deal. We've got this down. So it's been nice to elevate the work we do. Our 3-person team, we've been involved in projects in a way that we've never been before from a major gifts perspective. I'd love to hear if anyone else has had a similar experience with that. But the video you're seeing here, a student launched, and it was the first video that we sent out in Virtually Amazing. It's gotten a lot of press. It was on morning shows. And funny enough, it's actually a student totally initiated it without the school's knowledge and kind of appeared. But it's been a joy to hear even feedback from, people who, I know who are connected with fundraising, but they're not really fundraisers, going, oh my God, I just saw this video. It's incredible. I had no idea your students were so good. So it's been a joy for staff just to see that.
It's a beautiful piece of music. I would highly recommend, as someone who truly loves music. I mean, I work at a performing arts school. Berklee's video is quite good. So I would recommend seeing it if you haven't yet. Alfred, you piped up in the chat that you can share what you guys have been working on at USC. You mind? I'm going to unmute you. Maybe. That's right. Oh,
there we go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Alfred, why don't you pipe in?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess I should just quickly explain sort of my shop too. So you have a little bit of context. So I oversee both alumni relations and annual giving for the School of Dramatic Arts. We do have a central office of annual giving who manages the phonathon program, all of sort of the masses of the appeals that they do through all the different communication channels. And then what we do at Dramatic Arts is we sort of supplement or we tailor to our specific arts community. And we work in partnership with and in tandem with the central office. So for example, if they're sending something out, we may suppress some of our people from what they're doing because we have a different strategy for them. Or they'll give us toolkits, or they'll give us, mailer templates or whatnot, and then we can tailor our language to our specific community, and then they'll send it out on our behalf. So that's kind of how we work at USC, just so you have some context. But on my alumni relations side, we have done a lot of virtual, I feel like I've been more busy doing events than when I'm back in the office because we're just trying to offer a lot of virtual programming. So we've had alumni who work in the industry talk about, sort of what their state, the industry is. We've had some notable people in the industry come and speak to our senior students because, our seniors were very, as many of you know, in an art school, a lot of the experience, students need to be in person, right? They need to be in rehearsal halls. They want to be on stage. So for some of our seniors, their culminating activities really relied upon in-person gatherings. So for our seniors who are doing their showcase because they want to showcase to talent managers or directors to, to book gigs, that we weren't able to gather in person for that. We had to cancel travel plans. So we just knew that we had to really embrace Zoom and figure out what we could do for both our students and our alumni community. So we ended up filming our showcase and we have those posted on our website. And I can send you guys all the links to some of these things. So the showcase, they ended up being filmed and we sent those out to all the talent managers and whatnot. All of the alumni virtual sessions that we've been doing, webinar, we've been doing them in sort of webinar mode. We've been recording them and sort of repurposing them, for people that maybe couldn't watch in. But it's been nice with Zoom because it's great. It's granted us, it's allowed us to cast a wider net of participants because now people have more access. So for somebody who might live in Texas who typically can't come to LA or to New York to come to our events can now tune in and watch and feel like they're part of it. So we're not letting go of Zoom now that we've really fully embraced it, even in this. However, whatever the new world is going to be, we're going to still continue to embrace Zoom and utilize it as a tool because we can engage people that we have not been able to engage before. But I think in terms of the learning environment, the students really want to be back in person, especially as an art student, because, a lot of what they do requires a classroom or a stage or, you know, a recording room or whatnot. So that's really more our challenge, is trying to figure out how we can have develop a hybrid model where we might be able to do some things online, but bring certain key components of our program back, back to campus. But I think, I love this video. I mean, I think showcasing and continuing to embrace Zoom as a platform to showcase things virtually, whether it be, a networking webinar or a networking event or a webinar or an info session, or just, showcasing what your students are doing in their classroom or in their shows. I think we should all just continue to embrace Zoom in this new world. And I think it's sort of, this disruption, right, has been good for all of us to some degree, because now we know we can use the technology and we're all comfortable with it. And even as a staffing structure, my boss is now like, hey, we all, we know that we can really work from home and be successful. So I might let you guys work from home 1 or 2 days a week in this new world now, because we all have our laptops and, so it's like this disruption to some, degree has been good for us. It's forced us to kind of embrace change and embrace technology and really rethink how we do things.
I think that's all really well said. And, a lot of what we try to do is understand who cares, right? And who's raising their hand and showing that they have affinity for the institution. And we're probably a little bit guilty, just as Alfred says, of being sort of event focused and location focused. And there's a whole bunch of people out there that love us, but we're just not fitting their schedule. And now they can sit on their sofa and basically demonstrate all that good feeling in a way that we were just a little bit slow to the party to fold into our programs. That was all well said, Alfred. Thank you.
Yeah.
We were running into those challenges too, with the students wondering, and Julia brought this up too, is that we're so used to these beautiful perfected performances that we share that we don't really show the process as much as we would like. And what I found interesting is, for our school, the strategic communications team has just been gung-ho about sharing grassroots videos and pictures that students are sharing on Instagram, and they're finding ways to connect with themselves online. It's just us trying to tap into what they're doing. So, for example, our drama students, the first and second years actually are not allowed to perform on stage. They are only allowed to perform on stage in front of an audience in their third and fourth year. But they decided to do these Instagram story where they did an unofficial drama showcase, where really I think they did it just for them to connect with each other. But I, follow them on Instagram, and so I followed their video, and they're singing their hearts out and interacting with each other. And a few donors found their way on too, and so they got to see what their class dynamic is outside of being in the classroom with them. So I absolutely agree that there are ways we can leverage this and to expand who we're reaching out to. It's interesting because one of the questions that Marissa brought up, and Alfred, you hinted at this too, I feel like, is that how do we know when we get to the point where we're oversharing or overwhelming, or, we're providing not too much, but people are getting burnt out. So have you guys thought about that in terms of, in your communications, how much is too much in a way? And I'm just going to open that up to, if you have a comment, feel free to comment in the chat, or go ahead and pipe in, anyone from the committee.
You want to be top of mind, but get off of my mind already? Is that it?
A little bit, yeah. So like Alfred, Bob, I'm going to point you out. You usually call me on the phone instead of doing a Zoom chat. So I think we both have a little bit of Zoom burnout. So how do we avoid Zoom burnout and virtual burnout? And maybe that's not a question we can answer right now, but it might be top of mind for this group here.
Yeah, anybody? I guess, we're not generally rewarded for being shy in our profession, right? And so it probably, the same lessons apply to engagement. But you don't know when you've crossed the line until you've gone over the line, probably, and everybody's got their own sort of preferences too, right?
One thing we've been talking about in terms of finding that balance is how transparent should we be with our donors, with our prospects, and that includes, alumni, parents, our patron community who gives back. how much information is too much information. So obviously, I think like every school, Berklee's has seen reduced income over the summer. We don't have our summer program. We just instituted furloughs for about 3 months. And, we want to make sure, particularly for some of our most engaged donors, that they both trust Berklee, that they understand that we're being good stewards of their dollars. And really, it's not just our, major donors, but just, people, in our community who have been regular donors. And we want them to feel like we're doing right on their behalf for our students. But at the same time, we also don't want anyone to think that Berklee's in panic mode, that we're making these decisions very carefully and then they're done in a very strategic way so that we can continue and be the school that we are, and that we're not going to kind of compromise anything to do with our education. And we're finding that a little bit tough, particularly going into the summer and having just had furloughs. So I'd love to hear if anyone else has had those conversations about whether it's individual or on a mass scale, what you're sharing, because I'm seeing mixed things. Some schools are very transparent, and other schools I'm seeing aren't really communicating at all, one of which is my alma mater, about what the structure and finances look like currently at those institutions.
At MassArt, we've been having at least monthly town halls internally where the president and the administration will tell us very frankly, like, this is what's going on. This is what we've been talking about every day at our COVID meetings. And so I and my colleague in annual giving, we've been talking about the same thing. Like, what do we tell our donors? Because I want to have a clear reason for support, and everybody knows that everybody is struggling. And I want to allude to the fact, like, look, we need to buy a lot of plexiglass and cleaning supplies, and like, we need your help. But also I'm like, where's the line? What am I allowed to tell everybody? And so we've kind of just been being a little bit vague and being like, students' needs are heightened, and things need to change, and we need your support. And so that's just what we've been doing. I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, I've been also trying to pivot our stewardship back to what you were asking, Jaclyn, about like how much is too much. And going into the summer, I'm like, okay, we need to stop soliciting people for a while so they can have a break, but also how to make sure they don't forget about us. And so we have like our normal matrix of stewardship touch points, but I was looking at them the other day and I'm like, it's just a very cute postcard that says thanks for giving, and like our new donor packet talks about the new MassArt Art Museum that opened in February that now no one can go to. And I'm like, all of this stuff needs to be redone, and we have to talk about timely things. So we're being more intentional in the subject matter, but kind of like with our solicitation schedule, just trying to keep up with like what touch points are sent when, but just trying to change the language.
Jonathan, you brought up a good point in the chat that it just seems obvious now that I'm reading it, but of course I didn't think of it, of tracking open rates and comments and that sort of thing. And that just like our donors will raise our hand when they're ready to give, they'll probably also raise their hand saying, I'm tired, like step back a little bit. So, and you're talking a little bit, you want to talk a little bit about how you're structuring your communication between your major prospects and then kind of your annual fund larger pool, because you said you're segmenting more of who gets to see what, correct?
Yeah, especially when it comes to those type of internal financial workings and some of the more sensitive subject matters, right? I know furloughs have been brought up and other topics in our discussion today. And so those are conversations that we have more one-on-one with major gift donors, because we know that the size and nature of their investments might change based on those conversations, whereas most individuals from a basic annual giving perspective probably don't necessarily need to know that information to make their investments, right? If they're going to make their investments, we're going to communicate what we think is going to motivate them to make those types of investments. Everyone does get in our newsletters that go out, any press releases that are sent from our chancellor's office or university marketing or external affairs groups, they get that information, which is, I think, robust enough to meet most people's needs from Western Carolina University's perspective. But we do every now and again get questions that come into our annual giving at wc.edu, and we will respond to those people the best way we possibly can. Sometimes we don't necessarily know the answers to their specific questions. We let them know that. But if people reach out to us on a one-on-one, even if they're not major gift donors, we'll answer those questions, but we will proactively go to our major gift and leadership prospects to talk to them about those things that we know that they already care about, in conversations we would probably already be having with them anyway, regardless of the sensitive nature around them. But in terms of how to engage more holistically, we do track open rates, likes and shares, registration, those types of things. And there have been certain programs that we've implemented where the open rates are dropping. Not as many people are registering anymore. They kind of got their fill of it. It met their need. And so we might revisit it again in the future and refresh it in some capacity, but we've gone on to do other types of engagement activities that are generating more traffic. And so we tried to the best of our ability to keep a bead on that. But we had a Zoom social the other day that only had 4 people show up to it. So, I mean, it's sometimes you don't necessarily know, I think, like Bob said, and until you know, right? There's no way to necessarily predict that, yes, this next one is going to be the cliff. You just have to recognize it when it happens and then pivot. So
there's no algorithm, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Not yet.
Jaclyn, you're doing great. Do you want to talk about what we think is going to come over the hill for next fiscal year? Do I dare even ask?
Well, and that's kind of where we're heading, is as we're trying to feel out what types of events we're doing, where burnout is going to be felt, and that sort of thing. I think top of mind for all of us also was as we look to next year in our arts alumni, specifically those who have those performing arts background, as well as, visual and design, how do we show sensitivity? I know at School of the Arts, a lot of our alumni, they are go-getters, and the way they succeed in the market is that they do a lot of freelance. They do a lot of gig work. I have one alum that I cannot keep track of. It's a game every day of where is this alum in the country, because one day he'll be in Seattle, and then the next day he'll be in Philadelphia designing a set, and then he'll go back home to New York City working on Broadway stuff, and then he'll go all of a sudden to South Carolina, and I can never quite follow where he is. So you can imagine alumni who are really successful and who have nailed the gig economy to be successful are really struggling right now. So how do we, show sensitivity to our alumni who are in those situations? So Julia, you talked about, and I'll apologize when I reference this, all of the folks who agreed to start this conversation with me sent me some notes of what they're working on. And so Julia sent a note about talking about campaigns, which campaigns resonated with which segments, and how do we leverage this? So Julia, do you want to talk a little bit about what you guys are focusing on for segmentation next year?
Sure. Our goal, our dollar goal, is going to remain flat for next year. So that's a little bit of context, but we're looking at the fatigue that our donors are going to feel from so many electronic communications. And so we're trying to target. And so what we're looking at right now is, ever since we went remote to now, all of the communications that we've sent out and how much they've resonated with each of our donor segments. So whether it's Livent, Sybunts acquisition, or if it's faculty, staff, parents, alumni, friends, just looking at which segments performed best with what types of communication, so we can kind of target more and have people receive less giant amounts of communications, and it can be more intentional, especially as we head into the fall. We have seen a huge response to video-based communications, and so we're going to try and incorporate that some more. One way that we got a lot of video content was we had to pause our phone-a-thon program, but the school was we're going to keep paying our students because it's the right thing to do. So we pivoted their job descriptions so that they became content creators for us. And so they would submit video diaries where they're I'm logging into my class, and this is what happens, and this is how we give each other critiques now, and this is something that I've been working on. We got a lot of great content that way, and we're hoping that we can continue to bring the stories of like a few students like through the summer, through the fall, and engage our constituencies that way.
I know one thing we've talked about at School of the Arts is how do we really get mission-centric in our communications. So knowing that our alumni might not be in the best situation, just really focusing in on what is the purpose, because our alumni have gone through ups and downs before. And we're actually kind of new to soliciting our alumni. We've always, well, I guess previous administrations and even in the fundraising division have been, our alumni are poor, starving artists and can't afford it. So we'll just focus on the community aspect. So we actually have a really strong community donor base, and we've been growing our alumni base over the last 6 years. And that's just been our focus right now, is being mission-centric of here's the impact of what we deliver. Is anyone else changing? How are you changing your tone to match the needs of your alumni as well as anyone else that you might be soliciting at this time?
Well, I'll just say what, go ahead.
I was going to say, come on, pipe up. It's a conversation.
I'll just say what drew me to you all in the first place, going back 10 years or more, is the fact that you have a tough road to hoe anyway, right? That, you don't tend to graduate a whole lot of future wealthy folks. And that was before all this happened, right? But, I've heard the story so many times of parents talking about how my child found their tribe when they came to your schools. And I just appreciate sort of that mission, even though it doesn't always lend itself well to big fundraising results, at least not with alumni. So I think Jaclyn's point is exactly right. That was kind of a sensitive word choices before this all happened, and now it's just probably even more exacerbated, isn't it?
I have to say, at Cranbrook Academy of Art, we're doing the same thing. I'm writing a solicitation right now, and I don't want it to sound like it's a sinking ship and that, we really need your money or anything like that. And going back to your point, Jaclyn, I want it to be mission-centric. I'm trying to focus on what we're doing and that we're going to continue these efforts no matter what, because they're important to so many.
Well, and I'll say our chancellor has done a good job. He was the interim chancellor. He just got announced as chancellor this past week, which thankfully might be a saving grace for me, because he was very popular, and I think he will continue to be very popular as a chancellor. He's very good at what he does. But he would do these weekly check-ins that we would send out through various channels, Facebook as well, talking about how the art we create is needed now more than ever, because it creates more empathy and more joy and more light in this world. And that, don't steal this, because my boss will be really mad that I shared.
Too late.
One of his favorite taglines right now is that the people that will tell the story of today are the artists that we're training. So the students who are in the middle of experiencing this, and we're training them to tell the story of our lifetime. And that's been kind of our tagline. I know Dartmouth, actually, I was in a presentation where they were talking, and they are highlighting how this is the whole point of the annual fund. We talk about, and everyone's always scared about annual fund being a black hole, but the whole point of flexible dollars is when you have something that you could never have planned for. And let's be honest, no one's planning for pandemics as a fundraiser, that there is flexible funding so that you can pivot at a moment's notice. And so they're really trying to leverage that message of your dollars did exactly what it was supposed to do, which I think is also another incredible message of you did exactly what we needed to in a moment of crisis to help us weather a storm. So we've got some other folks that are ready to talk. So I'm sorry, I was talking and I didn't see the chat.
No, so you're doing great. I was going to bring it up, but go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you're watching the chat, Bob. So what have you seen as people are talking?
There was a general question about social media, and in a way, has that been sort of a catharsis, I guess might be the word, for people wanting to sort of remind themselves they're part of your family as institutions. Anybody have anything to chime in about that? Whether it's Facebook or any other outlet. I think in a way, this is another opportunity to exercise some of those muscles that we've neglected a little bit. but anybody have any social media commentary, fundraising or engagement or otherwise?
At Western Carolina University, we didn't stop Phonathon, but I'm not allowed to hire any more students. I can have all the attrition in the world, right? So people can leave, but I can't replace them. And so we have had for the summer term some students who have bowed out, and so we're reinvesting those resources into social media and advertising on social media and in the digital space as well, right? Not just Facebook and LinkedIn, but across all digital media. So we've seen some good return on that investment in terms of just general engagement. People aren't necessarily overtly any more negative than they already would be, for those people who like to comment every time you post something. So we probably all have someone like that at our institution, and we haven't seen any real major blowback on social media or any phone calls or emails coming into us from what we've been doing on social media, either from an engagement standpoint or a fundraising standpoint specifically. So, I think people know that it's necessary, they know that it's needed, and people will get on board if they have the means to, and you put out there a compelling message that motivates them. And then not all your messages are going to motivate everyone, but people will participate when they can. I think something that we should try to do, and it not necessarily can be done via social media because I don't think we have the technology to be that sophisticated yet at that level, is to we're tracking everyone who has commented to us or written in or in a phone call has said to us that they've either lost their job, had a reduction in income, or has a family member who's been impacted by direct illness with COVID. And so we have removed them from pretty much any type of direct communication, albeit they'll still get social media stuff. And so when people have alerted us to that, we're making sure that we're not, over communicating to them, because we get it. We know if you haven't told us, then we'll still, beat the drum. I don't know if that helps at all, Jaclyn, but that's what you got.
No, it does. Hey, Diana, I'm going to call you out because you've been a little active on the chat here, talking.
That'll teach her.
This is what happens when you get active on the chat. You're talking about things like your alumni shout out, sharing COVID resources, virtual events. Out of curiosity, is your office pushing that, or are you working in tandem with other offices to push out this information?
Well, so our department is under the Office of Advancement. So we're the Alumni and Family Engagement team. Actually, my colleague Carolyn and Harmony are also engaged with this. Carolyn had mentioned earlier kind of about our messaging to kind of alternate between, the seriousness of the situation and the coming together over this. So we're under the Office of Advancement. So we kind of work with other teams in our department, and, we work with messaging from our communications department in terms of who needs to communicate what to what groups. So like for our social media channels, we've done messaging in emails, but for our social media channels, we've kind of done what we've always done, but kind of more opportunities for people to come together virtually. Like, for example, we have an alumni announcement, and for our, what I mean by alumni shout outs is that we have an alumni announcement request form. So our alumni can request to have something, like an event of theirs that's coming up, or an accomplishment that they, did, or a award that they got at any level. It doesn't have to be, at a certain level. So we've just been kind of doing the feel good stuff, but I was just curious what other people were doing in terms of messaging for giving on their social media platforms.
I've been working on an idea with my boss. We're probably going to start it up in the fall. It's going to be an email series that I'm going to brand as an in case you missed it. So we have a lot of information shared through all of these different channels, but it's hard to keep track of who's connected by what channel. And so the In Case You Missed It series will just be, hey, we saw this really interesting information, and as an annual fund donor, we think it would be interesting for you because you invest in this school. And so It turns out I did a little sleuthing, and there's a really easy way to steal videos off of Instagram and pictures off of Instagram. Obviously, we're going to go to the students and ask for permission, but it's really not hard to up their grassroots work that they're working on. We had one student on Facebook who was recording her etude practice, and I might be butchering that, but she's a horn player, and so every week she was uploading her video, and so the thought was that would be perfect for, and in case you missed it, hey, check out, she's posting to the Horn Studios Facebook page if you want to leave some messages on her. And so trying to find some things maybe off the beaten path that if you're connected to that person, you might see it, but if you're not, then you might not have seen it. And so, and since it's branded in case you missed it, it kind of covers our tale of maybe you did see it and that's great, but in case you didn't, you might want to see it instead. And we're going to be sending that out through ThankView. That's kind of our video platform to send things out through.
Great, thank you.
Diana, a couple quick Facebook things that I'm seeing related to fundraising. One is just very date-specific stuff. So around giving days, or maybe like a 3-2-1 countdown at the end of a fiscal year. I think Facebook and social media in general are great places to play with time-specific stuff. And then I'm starting to see more places do things with customized lists on Facebook. So everybody who's about to become a lapsed donor at the end of the year, or people that we didn't reach in the phone-a-thon, or anybody who's a recent graduate. If you haven't played with customized lists in Facebook, you might give that a look. Neither of these things are a silver bullet, but they're nice uses of other channels just to reinforce some of the other messaging that you have going out. Are two things that I see. Jaclyn, we allotted an hour and 15 minutes for this, and I know some people are excusing themselves. If anybody has to go, I want to say thanks in advance for a great chat and a great panel, as well as the people that we drafted along the way. I mean, I'm happy answering any last questions and continuing the chat, but I think this has already been good. But keep going if you want. And if there's any other questions people want to throw to the group, type them in chat and we'll bring them up.
Actually, Marissa had a question about how you're holding phone-a-thon from afar. I don't have a phone-a-thon, so I can't really comment on that. But for any of you who do have a phone-a-thon, what are you doing to engage your students? Obviously, content creation, but anything else that you're doing that you feel is particularly innovative or useful for the group?
I don't know.
You can go, Jonathan.
I don't know if necessarily we're doing anything inherently innovative or novel, but I mean, we hold training sessions virtually. We are communicating with our, at the beginning of March, we had our check-in calls, all of our fundraising campaigns. We still segment, and our students are still making asks to the appropriate audiences via the phone. I mean, operations from that philosophical perspective haven't necessarily changed. We do have some content creation. Some of them are doing a lot more video. Some of them are doing a lot more stewardship that is not phone related at all, that are going out for different types of communications. They have a little bit more free time now that they can't do things really. And so they're more willing to help out in non-phone-a-thon related activities, which has been really great. They write handwritten thank you notes. Like I said, they do a lot of video for us. And, sometimes I'll have them draft copy because I'm insanely busy, like I'm sure a lot of you are as well. And so I'll say, hey, we have, an email series getting ready to go out about, our red carpet event for our film and television students. And I want you all to take a crack at writing a fundraising email, right? And so it's helping them also get broader exposure to what we do. So anyway, that's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah, the off-site phone-a-thon wasn't even a thing, I don't think, until recently. And now there's service providers who are offering web-based calling platforms, and it seems like a very interesting debate these days. I've heard people say, under no circumstances would we have kids calling from anywhere other than the phone room. And yet, with the sort of right sizing that's going on with a lot of phone-a-thons, and the awareness that we have of who our best callers are, and the ones that sort of get the joke about how to do this, it seems it seems okay to me to set them up to call from their home or wherever else, even if I don't need legions of them like I did once upon a time, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that percolates. But form follows function, right, Jaclyn?
Very much so. I don't even want to think about PCI compliance with all of this.
Right, yeah.
On right now.
And more, yeah.
We're also concerned about like security and stuff with remote phone-a-thon. And so because we're not allowed to obviously have a room full of students, we're thinking about scaling it and then maybe addressing like the non-live phone-a-thon segments with a video of a student that could be like sent out in mass. Like maybe you don't say the person's name and you're just like, hey, I know you gave this amount last year, blah, blah, blah. It's been really helpful. I hope you renew. And it's more of like a video message like you can send through ThankView. I don't know if we're going to buy ThankView, but it would be something like that. We're trying to think of ways to still engage our audience in like a personal way that doesn't require a student using their own cell phone and looking at like a Google Doc in their home, because we're concerned.
Yeah, we are in the same boat as you, where we are concerned of what our goals will look like, or reaching our goals will look like next year without a phone-a-thon if we're not able to hold it traditionally. But we're also very nervous about giving students the opportunity to call from their homes. So we do have ThankView. So as we think about the fall, and we're kind of thinking from a, what if we're not on campus at all first, and kind of moving back from there, ThankView is going to play a really big role in that. We have done personal solicitations through it in the past, and we've seen mixed results. We haven't done it for about a year, so we're going to revisit that and think through what wasn't working, rewatch the videos, how we think we can modify that. And also, again, kind of harkening back to how we can partner more with the major gifts team. Maybe we can't do what we normally can do, but how do we maybe raise not as many donors, but at least have partnerships in helping to raise those dollars. So we're in the midst of that, but I'd love to hear if any other schools have some unique ideas there.
I bet you'll see the day. Jaclyn, I already said thank you. Why don't you say thanks to everybody, and then we don't want to overstay our welcome, right?
It's true. It's true. Unfortunately, there's more questions coming in that I'm like, wait, I want to talk about this. Big thank you first off to you, Bob, for organizing this, for making the Zoom channel available. Just to plug in Bob, because he's very modest, FundList does actually have quite a few on the planner. So if you go where you went to register onto the calendar, there's a lot more great topics. And Bob has lots of connections. And so you're going to hear from lots of schools from all over the country. So I would highly recommend looking, if you're looking for more research into what people are doing, definitely give it a look through and start signing up. As well as other conferences that are coming up. I'll plug in the Carolinas Annual Giving Conference. We are doing a virtual conference. It had been for the Carolinas, but obviously we are opening it up to really anyone. So if you are interested, it'll be a lot more of these topics, but it'll be much more traditional based, where you'll have your presenter and discussion format at the end. So
this is all great, but you're supposed to be thanking the panel.
Oh yes, I am thanking Marissa, Julia, everyone else. You guys have been absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
And Kelly, just coming on and making time for us. Thank you. And for all that have commented, thank you so much. It's been a very great discussion, and it's nice to move away from the traditional, here's a presentation, here's what we did format. So for all of you who participated on the chat, whether you spoke up, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation.
And thanks to you. You're a natural. I'd listen to you on the radio. You're good.
Actually, I have worked on radio. I was on radio.
Well, there you go. You can take the girl. Thanks, everybody. Great fun. Really appreciate it. Let's do it again sometime, okay?
Sounds good. Bob, you schedule us. Let us know when.
You got it. Take
Bye,
care.
everyone.
See everybody.